Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Tropical MBA podcast, the show helping you to build a more profitable location-independent business. So the question today, how can we manage our team and run the day-to-day operation of our businesses in less than 5 hours a week so we can spend the rest of our time focused on growth, focused on sales, focused on innovation, visionary stuff. Today's guest is Layla Pomper, the founder of ProcessDriven. You can find her on YouTube, where she deep dives into how founders can use simple processes to manage their businesses more effectively. In fact, today we're going to share 5 specific processes that you can implement, some by the end of the episode, to make your life as a founder easier. We'll also touch on a broad range of topics after that, like the visionary integrator thing, what founders should be doing more of, as well as how to grow a powerful YouTube channel. We'll also touch on, interestingly, towards the end of the episode, also Layla regularly surveys her audience, and she will share some of the top tech tools that bootstrappers are using to run their businesses more effectively. All that and more with today's guest, Layla Pomper. Let's roll the conversation. The first question is the easiest. Let us know what your name is and what it is you do.
My name is Layla Pomper. I run ProcessDriven. What I do is I work with small teams of 3 to 50 people who are struggling to get done, and I help them build the systems they need to actually execute whatever it is their business is built to do. And I do some YouTube.
One of the things that is a core belief of yours is that being organized and process-driven is a skill. It is not a personality trait or a talent.
Yes. Absolutely.
Can you let me know about that?
The truth of the matter is I'm not a particularly organized person. I wanted to be an art teacher when I was in school. I thought that would be the epitome of success until I realized what art teachers get paid, unfortunately. And, when it comes to running your business, there's all these different skills we have to learn. I've had to learn how to market. That has not come naturally to me. It's very hard. In the same way, I think learning how to communicate what you need to get done, learning how to keep track of the promises you've made to clients or your audience, these are all just skills that we can and need to learn if we want to become business owners and not just, doers, business doers, if you will, work doers. And so I think when we actually start viewing business systems as a skill, just like the skill of managing your financial budget, all of a sudden we can stop putting our head in the sand about it. And I think there's a lot of popular talk right now that suggests the opposite, that being organized or having strong systems is this inherent ability that some people with certain traits just have. And I've just not found that to be true for myself or for my clients.
One of the things I wanted to bring up with you before we get into the top 5 tactics or systems that can save you time and get you out of your business, I think most of us are dreaming of an integrator, basically.
Yeah.
Thank you, traction, or somebody who can get us out of delivery magically. But I think most of us that are listening right now have less than 15 employees. A lot of us are being able to afford a legitimate integrator. So the question I wanted to ask you, when you're working with clients that are sub 15 employees, what is a realistic time investment on a weekly basis or even on an annual basis in terms of planning for building systems and managing the team? Basically, how much time should we be integrators when a lot of us are saying, well, the true constraint in my business is visibility and growth?
So people get shocked when I tell them these numbers, but I'm going to preface this by saying this is based on working with literally thousands of companies who are doing this exact thing at this point. Most of our clients, our average team size is 10 employees or 10 team members. So caveat. With that caveat put out there, 1 to 4 hours a week is about the amount of time that a business of this size needs to spend on integration activities. What I mean by that is, project management, making sure tasks are getting done, making sure people know what to work on. And when I say that, usually folks are like, come on, 1 to 4. Meanwhile, Traction's over here saying I need to hire a full-timer at $175K a year. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
The reason that's possible is because there is a one-time effort at the beginning. And I usually say between 20 and 60 hours up front to basically build kind of the operating system, for lack of a better word, of how your team works. When we set up a system, and here I'm talking about things like a task management software, some templates for how you onboard clients or whatever it is you do, a few key pieces, the core things that run your business, when we build a structure for that once, then the actual day-to-day of your business should not require even a part-time job in order to keep it organized. 1 to 4 hours from a project manager is what I would expect to see, and not often the business owner involved in that stuff at all.
That completely checks out with my experience. In fact, I'm guessing a lot of people find their way to your YouTube channel when they hire team member like 6 or 7. They feel the pain, they start watching, and then they call you at 10. And one is, I don't know, maybe that's your customer journey. I imagine it is, because this is when things really start to be like, oh, shit. And I also say the same, which is I believe the target should be pre-integrator less than 5 hours a week. You should be managing your company in less than 5 hours a week. And if you're not currently doing that, if you're stuck in delivery, this episode is for you. So let's move on to some tactics. The cool thing about these is like, you don't have to do comprehensive. You can start small and put some stuff in and see how it goes, or you can sit down for 60 hours with the professional and get it all on trail. So like, let's mix them up, some bigger stuff, some smaller stuff. I'm curious about what has the most returns for your clients.
This is what I love about this space. It's kind of like when working out and like health and fitness became more mainstream. We could just say, hey, the baseline is so low, especially for us Americans. If you just go on a walk, you will see huge transformations. We're kind of in the same when it comes to operations. We are also operationally unfit that I would say the first thing we can do, you can literally do before this podcast episode finishes. So feel free to multitask as long as you're not driving. Tactic number 1 would be to start tracking your mistakes. That is the number one thing for any team of any size, whether you started last week or 45 years ago. Start creating a running list of everything that goes wrong in your business as the first tactic.
Go on. I've never heard this one. I like this one. So how does it work? And how do you present that to the team? How do we turn this into a productive behavior?
So what we want to do is we want to create one centralized spot. Could be a Google Doc, could be a list inside your Asana area, your ClickUp, whatever tools you're already using. Call it mistakes list, for lack of a better word. When things go wrong, you as the business owner, I want you to start modeling putting things into this list, starting with things that you have screwed up. So for example, Layla the other day, that's me, forgot to put a blocker on my Calendly before I went out of the office for something. And so I had my Calendly just running in the background. I came back to 15 sales calls in one day. Not good. What I would do is create a task on my, in this case, mistakes list. And I would say, Calendly buffer was not set up correctly. This is a mistake I made and I'm logging it. That's the behavior we want to model to begin with, focusing on our own mistakes. After a few instances, we want to start focusing on anyone's mistakes, ideally getting them to self-report. So in this case, if my team member, Sarah, realizes that a support ticket got missed, it wasn't returned in one business day, Sarah's going to go in and create a mistake tracker in there saying, we lost one support ticket in the queue, the filters weren't set up correctly, we needed to fix it. We're going to start building this running list of the things that went wrong and when they went wrong and why they went wrong.
And you're going to check on this on your weekly team? That would be the cadence?
So what I would suggest is keeping this as a running list. So this is ongoing. There's no set cadence as to when you need to go back and look at this. However, I like to, on a quarterly basis, do a review of all of them. So when we have our quarterly team planning, we will look at this. Here's all the shit that went wrong in the last quarter. Based on this, what needs to change? But there's a smaller tactic we can also do to make these mistakes unlikely to repeat. That happens in real time as well. So the practice I would combine, this is tactic number 2. So if you have a mistake list, congratulations. We know that only about, I think it's 17% of small businesses have a mistake list, period. It's just in our heads. But the second tactic we can then do is whenever a mistake is tracked, we require across the team, you fix the mistake and you prevent the mistake. You can't consider it done until both of those things are complete. And that starts really dramatically changing your business. We know we do some research on our clients and we collect like survey results and so on operations. 52% of small businesses in our size bracket have a mistake at least a few times a week. 52%. That is wild. We have clients who go through and start practicing just these 2 things. And like one of our clients, Jim, he was 2 weeks with not one mistake after previously having one every single day. So these 2 tactics are a perfect peanut butter and jelly pair.
and so simple to do. I love it. A lot of us have already implemented this by the time the podcast is over. Brilliant.
Yes.
Another thing that it fits with your core philosophy, as I understand it, which a lot of us struggle with high-minded concepts. And
Yeah.
I hear you referencing two things here, which is leadership and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how do I be a good leader? It's like, I never led anything except maybe Boy Scouts when I was 11. So here I am all of a sudden reading some high-minded book about military leaders trying to figure out how to implement this in my business. And now all of a sudden I've got a clear path, which is like, I am going to demonstrate a culture of accountability. And it's really powerful when you see the team embrace this publicly. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about leadership and culture and like a bottoms-up approach versus a top-down.
Yeah. For everything that we do, in part because that's kind of how I got into this work, was from the bottom up, if you will. Started as a virtual assistant working in my remote online business and then transitioned over the years. But I think all change in a small business really that sticks for the long term starts from the bottom of the business. And so when we talk about systemizing a business in any sense, whether it's tasks or creating SOPs, I view, and I have seen the most success, having team members lead that change. What a business owner's job is that initial spark. It's that initial structure. It's that initial modeling. So we really lean into that visionary spurtsiness, even though I hate the term visionary and integrator, and lean into that. When it comes to how that actually works out for the team, when it comes to mistakes and preventing them and so on, what I like is to boil anything we're trying to do down into that bottom level of tactics. Because ultimately, when we say team-led, we're talking about tactical actions. I think any outcome we're trying to achieve, whether it's in health or fitness or wealth or anything else, it starts with what we actually spend our time doing. I was just in New York City and I flew in for this event that Seth Godin hosted, which was an incredible experience. It's so cool. And he had this line.
He's every bit as cool as he appears to be online. Yeah,
He's a guy who just said like everything in his house and his office has like a story behind it. And he had this one line at this event that is, you are what you do. And I think that really reflects why this bottom-up approach is so important to how we approach it is you are what you do. So if we're going to spend our time actually changing the mistakes, that is leadership. We're breaking it down into tactics. Even though we don't consider ourselves this, powerful CEO, we're taking the actions of a powerful CEO. And guess what? By doing that, that's exactly who we become.
I think there's a more consistent view, which is you are your practices or your habits. Ultimately,
Right.
You are what you do. And the visionary moment is having the inspiration to consider the habit, to spark it, as you mentioned. And so I think if you reframe that for yourself, like if you think of yourself as a visionary, but yet you're stuck in the business and you're not satisfied with what you're doing, that's the place to be a visionary, is like, well, how can I change these habits?
Yeah. The job of a visionary is to solve problems, ultimately, right? Think of how to solve the problems and give enough of that solution that it can be executed. That is exactly what process and system design is. No one is trying to turn anybody into a task rabbit or a glorified janitor of a business. It's just we're shifting where the creativity is focused.
Let's go to number 3 then. High impact tactic or process.
Yeah, the next thing I would say is once we start having mistakes, preventative actions, which are our first two, is to start a approach to just radical simplicity when it comes to systems. Because now that we've said, all right, every time something goes wrong, let's try to prevent it, there's going to be this overcorrection, especially for team members or for folks who are in more the corporate background, where they're going to say, all right, well, this thing went wrong. Let me just go spend 40 hours trying to prevent this from ever happening again. So the third practice I like to implement is this belief that we only build systems when it's going to meaningfully stop something that has an actual cost. So if a mistake happened and it could happen again, that's a real cost. Yes, we should prevent it, but only so much as is actually going to ensure that that is prevented. So an example is a support ticket comes in, we have to answer it. That question is probably going to come up again. So maybe we want to create a template for how to answer those kinds of requests. Amazing. But what we don't necessarily need to do is go re-MacGyver our entire SaaS product so that question is never asked again. And that feels extreme, but I've seen it so often. People start getting into process mapping or SOPs, and then they start building out this giant library of all these things that literally never get used again.
They never get used.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
It's a waste. And then they write off systems altogether.
100%. This is why actually like the system of like sales emails and sales scripts, I think get used more than other SOPs, because it's like we missed a sale because I didn't handle an objection well. And then when you tie these things to KPIs, they get extremely powerful. So like when I think about like, I was demonstrating some of your process mapping to a team member today. And, and you know, it's like you got a box and then you got a diamond and you got a workflow, and it's like super simple. If you do this on a piece of paper, you can do it in like 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
It gets really interesting when you put a KPI or some revenue around this stuff. You just drop it on there because I got a wide open blank piece of paper. Why don't I put our conversions are at 25%? The industry standard is 45%. Like what? Why is this box not working out right here? Why is this decision being made this way? It's really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah. Process map and a funnel map are pretty much the same things with different icons. Like the marketers or the sales conversion experts just put better icons on it, but it's the same practice.
It's the same
for
practice.
anyone here. Yeah.
Yeah. And in like a business model map is something that I'm like super passionate about. All this stuff can all flow together. SOPs, I think you can definitely over optimize for, and they just like sit in folders and they get dusty. But these things are like so simple to create that it's almost like you can't get too complex with this stuff. Like sit down for 30 minutes and like the models here, the funnels here, all the processes that execute these things are here. It's like never wasted time because you show it to your team and they're like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Well, you're doing it. Like, which point to me on the map where this map is wrong.
Exactly. And I think, you know, if we just hold ourselves and especially our team to that standard of like, is this thing meaningfully going to change a KPI? And I think a lot of the times the operations, the reason it gets, you know, respect and it's kind of treated like this janitor work is because we don't have things to attach to it. That's why start with mistakes, because that is a metric that I see folks use. How many mistakes do we have this month? How many mistakes do we have this quarter? The dramatic shift in that from practicing these first three really lets you know you're creating things that actually add value. If you're creating SOPs that are ignored, not looked at, not updated, odds are you created it because of a hypothetical from the armchair potential problem. And the problem is once you spend your time, you can't get it back. We're better off under creating and creating it based on real issues or real risks rather than these hypothetical ones that anxiety-ridden entrepreneurs tend to come up with in our heads.
So like tracking mistakes is like a hack to getting your team on the core value drivers in a way, which I find there's this tendency with small businesses where, especially like owners in a 10-person business have this oversized impact and they can tend to hoard the value driving activities. So if you imagine a business model map, a process map, a funnel map, it can often be the case that your team can like fade away from those core value drivers and they're on the periphery sort of organizing pencils because it's safe out there.
So true.
And so when you map this stuff, you ask yourself about ownership, right? That's part of your process is like, here's an important value driver, like who's responsible for conversions? Like it's got to be a name. It's not a box at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. And I think sometimes there might be folks listening to this who are pre-hiring, or maybe they just have some contractors and they're thinking, okay, that's great, Dan, but like all of the boxes are my responsibility because this contractor is just delivering these emails. So the one thing I want to remind everybody here of is when we're talking about responsibility, names are great. What's better is a role. So we want to think of a collection of things. I might be the business owner, but I'm also the content creator. I'm also the lead consultant. I'm also the email newsletter writer for some reason. These are 4 different hats I'm wearing. They're all me. But eventually I can take parts of these roles and give these hats to other people. And so even if you're a team of 1, you have people, you have roles in your business. And whether it's a contractor or you for now, you want to start breaking these out. Absolutely.
Incredibly useful. Both at the top of the company, at the bottom, if you do it for your, like you mentioned yourself, like Ian and I tend to get into this situation. Like if we take our names and what we're responsible for, it's sort of one thing, but our actual roles, like sometimes we're like more like board members and it's like, oh, we're the board members of a 10-person company, you know, like that's like cool. But like how many hours are we on board activities versus like COO and CFO and actual like sales and marketing and like things that have the potential to drive more value in the short term? The same situation can happen with your team where you say like, so-and-so is the webinar person,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not like writing the webinars or doing the hosting of them. So then it's like, what is actually the role? Versus like, you can hire somebody to be a webinar person, but you can confuse everybody by not having the clear differentiation between the role itself. And so the idea is like, if the role is truly important, like, is this person a good fit for it? Or do they need a new role?
Right. If they're not actually responsible, what's the point? You're not actually releasing any burden there. I think that's a
100%.
huge piece of it. And oftentimes I'll hear when we bring up this conversation, folks will say things like, well, this is all nice to have, but like, I don't even know where to get help. You know, all these value drivers, sure, I'm in charge of some, but all these are my roles or my team of 5. We all have 5 or 6 different roles and we're super overwhelmed and we don't even know where to get help to start getting these specialists who can actually take responsibility. But one of the cool things about doing what Dan and I are talking about is you can start subdividing these roles out. So when you're overwhelmed and you don't know how to hire help, think of the 4 roles you're wearing. And in my case, like newsletter writing and sales calls. Those are the sales closer and the newsletter writer. Those are 2 defined roles. I know exactly what I'm doing, how often I'm doing things. I know how much it's worth to me in the business to do these activities.
That's a critical one.
Yeah, if I want to delegate them, which is what's happening in the next few weeks, I know exactly what my budget is. And I have a job description of exactly what this person's going to do. And it's not guessing if this will help the business. I know it does. And so delegation is an extremely fast process when you have these roles defined.
All this stuff leads together. Like, one of my favorite concept unlocks in the past few years has been reading Greg Crabtree's concepts around labor efficiency ratio. And so it makes these decisions a lot easier if you're like, the gross margin on newsletter writing is $45,000 a year in this company. That means my budget, if could be $17,000, I'd be sitting really pretty. You know, that's the sort of analysis you can do when you have this information.
Yeah. And that's what, like, I don't want to get into time tracking because I know people aren't into that, but sometimes time tracking on a transition, that's a great way to find your budget. This takes me 20 minutes a week. Oh, it's not worth delegating. Do the math. It definitely is, even if you're just testing the time for a little bit. But that actually gets me into our 4th tactic, if I can dive into that one. This one is hard sometimes for control freak small business owners like ourselves because we like our control. We're doing our own things because we want to be, the boss.
Right.
Defaulting to delegation. I think this is the one kind of looser habit that's hard to build the skill. But even when it's faster to do something yourself, don't. Use that mistake list or use a shared to-do list of some kind that whenever anything comes up, you are notifying somebody. You're treating it as a courtesy. Hey, I noticed this thing that you're responsible for went wrong. Heads up. And you leave the issue on the other person's plate. Because what I see most business owners doing and leaders is something goes wrong. If no one's responsible, they are. And that's their default. The default is it must be on me if it's not clearly in someone else's job. And what I want to do is flip that on its head, where it's never you, unless it absolutely is.
What about the situation where you're ambitious about delegation? You delegate maybe a multifaceted project that has an outcome that's related to sales or outcomes you desire. And then the project kind of falls on its face. I feel like this is kind of a common one where it's like, in our case, we needed to sell 25 tickets, but we sold 15. And maybe I over delegated that one.
Yeah. So there's 2 different things that we're talking about here. There's the strategy, dare I say the vision, and then there's the execution of it. I think there is an argument for why strategy and checking in on those numbers, in this case, like ticket sales. We're planning our first conference. I'm going to be checking in every month of like, where are ticket sales? That is going to require perhaps your brain power, because this is an example of where you don't have a conference ticket sales expert on the team. It's worth your hourly rate to do that. Where I think things fall off the gander is you're not getting those numbers brought to you on a monthly basis. You don't have the time or the space to say, hey, Dan, here's the numbers right now. Here's where we need help. Hey, this is at risk. That stuff coming to you is what we should be delegating. Whereas most people think, because there's strategy involved, that means I just have to go in, remember to look at the stuff, remember to be worried about it. And I really think everything except that strategic decision-making shouldn't be. Project management is on team members. Getting things done by a deadline is on team members. Hell, when we do projects, we have a weekly status update routine for any project. Give me an update. Are we on track? Are we behind? Are we at risk? Why? Does this require more help? Yes or no? That just comes to me and requires no active effort. And I think that's where we want to get to.
Excellent. Today's sponsor has a ridiculous deal for you. Whatever you're paying for email right now, they will beat it. Whether you're using ActiveCampaign, Klaviyo, ConvertKit, or anything else, Bento will beat it. You could save 50, 60, even 70% off. But more importantly, you'll get more. See, most email platforms are cold, corporate, complicated. But Bento feels like your friendly neighborhood coffee shop. The all-in-one email, automation, CRM, and transactional messaging platform where they actually know your name. Whether you're paying $30 a month or $3,000, you can do broadcasts, automations, transactional email, CRM, automated list cleaning, and even live chat, all included while you're saving money. It's built by a DCer. It's used by DCers like Authority Hacker, Primal Video, Drop-In Blog, ZenMaid, all using and loving Bento. The email nerds love it. The operators swear by it. So if you're tired of duct taping tools together or fighting support queues trying to figure out why your emails are landing in spam, this is your sign. Head on over to bentonow.com/TMBA and show them what you're paying now. They will beat it. You could save 50, 60, sometimes even 70% off. And hey, if you're already getting a screaming deal on your email, boom, they'll give you $300 in free credits. You pick, because you're listening to TMBA now. What an incredible offer from our sponsor, bentonow.com. Check them out at bentonow.com. Head on over to the landing page, bentonow.com/TMBA, and tell them we sent you and supercharge your email in 2026. Tactic number 5.
Tactic number 5 is around boundaries. So this ties really well with defaulting to delegation, because once you start doing this, what's going to happen is people are going to start asking you questions. You're going to say, hey, sell 25 of these tickets. And they're going to say, sure. And then they're going to get stuck. And communication might break down, and you don't know till the project is done, we're at 15 instead of 25. What happened? Why didn't this come to me earlier? So tactic number 5 is a communication framework called CARS. 4 letters, each with their own meaning. And it's a way to ask for help in your team. And it's what I would suggest you give to your team members in addition to these 4 other things.
Okay.
So C stands for context. What is happening? A stands for here's what I've already tried to fix it. Request, R, stands for what am I asking of you? So if you're asking me something, Layla, I'm specifically asking you to say, should we go plan A or plan B? Or Layla, I'm specifically asking you, does what I'm thinking about make sense here? And stakes, which is most important, why is this important enough for you to disempower yourself and bother me to get this help? So this is a way to make sure that people are coming back to you and looping others in a effective, asynchronous, meeting-free way.
I'm curious about what sort of meeting cadences you're seeing in your clientele, especially at this 10-person. Like, what are your baseline recommendations, and how often should we be checking in? Because I find, like, even with the CARS thing, should you be concerned if you're not hearing anything? Give me a sense for how we can organize a communication structure across the company that keeps you plugged in enough, but keeps you below the 5-hour threshold.
Yeah, I mean, for most teams, I would say a weekly meeting is the most normal cadence. You'll see an all team and then a one-on-one. So 2 meetings per week per person is standard. I've seen people who go the opposite, where they have 1 monthly all team meeting or 1 quarterly all team meeting and nothing else. It can all work.
Okay.
In theory, most meetings, as people know them, like especially if they're in the EOS or scaling up or some of these common older, if I can call them out, frameworks, they're coming from an era where meetings were the only way to communicate. Like if we didn't have a meeting, it didn't happen. And I get it. And that's why daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly, like all these different rhythms are standard in those approaches. It's just not relevant now. You know, in the example of a project, we could have a task that says, hey, project manager, every week, post an update in our Slack or whatever that says where this project stands. Full status update. No need to have a Scrum meeting. Post it there. For other things that are happening in the business, like if people aren't responding to you and you need information, that's an example of a mistake that we can prevent. So again, I didn't get any information about these ticket sales falling behind. Every month, I want a campaign update delivered onto my virtual desk by posting it inside this other Slack channel or inside this task in ClickUp. And I want you to tell me, are we ahead, behind, and how much? Like every other thing is a communication breakdown, which we should treat as a mistake. But if you need a meeting in order to get your daily work done, that is systemic like process challenges. Whereas real meetings are for brainstorming and innovation. It's for the visionary stuff, which is much less common for a small team.
One of the challenges with the async stuff, I think for a lot of founders, is the energy required to dig in when you see the update and you're not satisfied with stuff. How do you deal with that? Like you get this big, long thing.
Yeah.
And it's often like, it's going to take me an hour to dig into this. And then I got to probably do it. How do you deal with that energetic? It's often easier just to skip it and stick to the visionary stuff. It's like, cool, I sign off.
That's why I've developed cars, because I hate that. Give me a long write-up. I will guarantee you I will not read it. What's nice about cars is I literally have my team CARS. I read the R. If I understand enough from that one sentence request that I don't need to read the rest, I don't.
So cars is the way they reach out to you.
Yeah, or each other.
Aside from KPI regular updates.
Yeah, it's how they write their Slack messages. It's how they write their emails. It's how they write their comments, is always with those 4 bullets. And half the time they realize, oh, I actually can't reach out yet because I haven't attempted anything. Or, ooh, I actually shouldn't reach out to Layla because the stakes aren't high enough that this is a CEO level thing. I should just go to this person. And so the messages don't come to me, but when they do, I've got a one-liner, like we copied Reddit, TLDR, the request. Here's exactly what I actually need from you. And if I need to read more, I can, but we don't get one-page essays.
Gotcha. What do you think are like some of the most common traction unwinds that you see for businesses with less than 15 people that come to you?
What do you mean by traction unwind? Like traction capital T or lower T?
Traction capital T, thinking that it is the most famous framework for, I think. But I also see a lot of people in and out of it and kind of struggling with it, or they paid 50 grand for it or whatever, and now they're super into it, but there's some ambivalence there as to sometimes how business is an ambivalent space. I like your approach bottom up, very simple, step by step. What are some things that you might delete from that or change when your clients come to you?
So one of my lines is like, no one's EOS, everyone's EOS-ish at best. Like everyone has this butchered it's like lean and agile and all these other frameworks. Everyone kind of mutates them into their own little way. But EOS, what's tough about it is the traction approach is very complicated, as you hit on. But fundamentally, just like its competitors scaling up, it is a planning and strategy framework, which is great. We need frameworks for what is our job as a CEO or executive team. However, that actually has no day-to-day basis on the business. The most detail we see inside the EOS framework is the level 10 meetings and the standard work lists. That still is not enough and not enough daily structure to actually inform on Monday morning, what am I doing? And so the first thing I work with folks on when they're coming from EOS is recognizing that your planning and vision and strategy is separate from, but related to, your daily tactics. And so we take the stuff that they're trying to do at the EOS level, which is things like standard work lists and so on. That's what we would typically remove. We would say, hey, let's not put that in a spreadsheet you're never going to look at. Let's not put that in a PDF that you spend hours on. Great, but you are never going to look at. And let's turn these into tactics. So recurring tasks is most often the first translation we're making for folks of what are the tactics that need to happen to make all of your strategic goals actually occur. And that level of like 20-minute task size things that recur, that is the first transition. For a typical small team, 10 people or so, about 60 to 80% of what your time and your team's time is spent on should be routine, reoccurring, business as usual stuff.
They should be maxed, right?
Yeah.
That's
for
your
freelancers,
job
you want 100%.
Right.
Yep. So that way your time can be 100% crazy innovation. That's our goal.
100%. That's very interesting. You know, I guess my emotional reaction to Traction when I first read it, I just put this on wax for the record. You know how books whisper something?
I haven't had books talk to me yet. So no, please fill me in.
Okay. So 4-Hour Workweek, this book is ostensibly about focusing on what's important, automating your life, living more life immediately rather than deferring it until retirement. All these amazing concepts about outsourcing and stuff. But you're reading the book and it whispers, hey, you could just quit your job and travel the world. You know that, right? And when I was reading Traction the 4th time or whatever, what it whispered to me was, this is going to be a great consulting business. Because I do think that he needlessly complicates the precise behaviors in a business that are attractive to the most well-paid members of that business who are willing to pay to increase or improve their career. And so I worry about it for the majority of our listeners have less than 15 team members. And so I do think that this more bottom-up tactical approach is useful to getting more valuable work done.
I think it comes back to something I think you guys talk about a lot here on the podcast is like, what are you designing for? You know, are you designing for freedom? Are you designing for this? Are you designing for that? You are right that book, but also many of the others that are in this genre, you know, E-Myth, Built to Sell, Clockwork, there's a reason why they are immediately followed up by a consulting certification program on the back end. That's how the businesses work. And I'm sure there's a lot of value that they provide to people, but you're right. It's positioning and preparing somebody to ultimately buy what the business offers. That's what books are. Spread an idea in order to grow the business. And in this case, the business model does really educate you on what kind of model and why they're incentivizing a certain approach. I think if you're trying to design a business that you can run in a passive way long term and you don't want high overhead, you want higher margins, it probably makes sense to build something that works around you rather than tries to replace you or fully augment you. Like the EOS approach in my most critical moods, I'll say it's like, your job is to make the mess, hire this person to clean it up. That's when I'm really salty about the integrator thing. That's how I view it. Whereas this is, hey, just learn how to not make a mess. It's really not that hard. And then cleaning up your kitchen doesn't take that long.
We all have these pet processes that our clients gristle at, and we wish that they would accept more, and we're struggling to sell them more. Does something jump to mind when I ask that question for you?
The thing that people really aren't excited about, but I really see the potential in, and I still think that they're eventually going to be excited about it, is one of the things we do with clients. You know, we talked about mistakes here, but I'm pretty big on measurement. I'm not organized by default, but I do like a good game. And, you know, I like seeing like how my weightlifting is going up over time. Like I like to see that progress. And one thing we do with clients is we give them measurables for operations and not just, you know, revenue per employee. I love those numbers, like super helpful. But things like how many mistakes happen in a month? How many things did you do to actually improve the business in a time period? What percentage of your time is going to routine operations versus fixing mistakes? How many SOPs do you actually have and use regularly in a 90-day period? We don't have a lot of them, but it's like a small scorecard of like 5 to 7 things that you can really easily watch over time change as you start operating in this more intentional way. My clients are like, oh yeah, that's cool. I'm just glad I don't have to work so hard. But I wish they would be as excited as I am about putting numbers behind this, because I think when you do that, you really are able to delegate and ultimately tie it to business valuation and other things that really long-term change your state as a business owner.
The thing that's been really powerful for us is adding LER by division and product. So we look at that on a monthly basis with our controller. So it's like, here's customer service, here's Dynamite jobs. Like we are seeing the LER figure, and we can, if it's in red, we can adjust super fast to that. A lot of us are overspending on our operations because we see it as a growth opportunity. And often increasing capacity doesn't magically unlock growth.
Nope. The metaphor I use with clients is like when you're climbing up a mountain, that rope is tied to a belayer who takes the rope in as you go up.
Yep.
And what that means is if you slip and fall, you kind of like hang there. You don't fall and die, yay, but you just hang there. The belayer cannot really pull you up that mountain. There could be a big weight differential. Maybe they can help a little bit, but they really can't. And I think this belay metaphor of climbing is exactly where systems help. What they do is they're save points. And if you've ever played a video game and like rage quit, this is preventing you from losing all your progress, but it's not going to pull you up the mountain.
Can you give me an interesting snapshot of like us? You know who we are and what we struggle with. What is this state of project management? Because one of the things that I've noted, I like your concept of ruthless elimination and simplification. And I think in larger teams, there's this desire to hire your underlings. So that's a big thing that we need to intervene on. In smaller teams, there's a big desire to hire SaaS. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like we need a new CRM. We need a new project management tool. So how should we think about tool choices, which are kind of big deals? Because like, okay, we're not only going to pay $6,000 a year for this, but now we're going to have to like talk to the salesperson for we're going to have to get trained on it. And it's going to magically make our lives easier. Tell us about like, what are people using and what's working, what's not, and how should we think about this stuff?
Yeah. So, and I should say, the reason I have all this data is not just from the clients we work with. We work with a few hundred a year, but we do an operations assessment for free for anyone in our audience that people answer a bunch of questions about their ops, and we then index. So we do a report each year where like, here's the state of ops. And what we see is that surprisingly, about, I think it's 40% of small businesses, maybe it's 45%, they do not have any spot to centralize the actual work that they do. So I think those of us, especially in the DC world, like this community is further along the curve than the average small business in terms of tech spend, tech investment, tech savviness. However, even for the teams that we see that are really far along and have a full tech setup, most of them are using them in a really shitty way. The fact of the matter is your system, like software companies will tell you, hey, use our software. It'll fix all your systems for example, sales and conversions. It'll be amazing. The problem is a system is not a software. A software is basically something that does the stuff for you. Great. It's essentially an employee who's automated. The system, meaning how that actually functions, the stuff we were talking about here of the process map, the boxes, that's the thing that actually determines whether that software is worth anything to you.
What happens is we will often buy the software and it will by default be the system, but it could be suboptimal for our situation.
Absolutely. And it usually is, because respectfully to all of our SaaS founders in this community, you're a SaaS founder. And so unless your product also serves other SaaS founders, there's a fundamental disconnect that's going to be there in the system you bake into your software. That's why most of this most successful software are from people who exited the audience that they now serve, because they at least understand from that component. But for SaaS companies, you are constantly spending your energy on market research to try to figure out, how should this system actually work to serve my avatar who is totally different than me? And so that's the caveat. I think when it comes to hiring software, which is how I think about it, for small teams, we want to start with process. What are the steps that are actually proven to work in our business? Which software actually does that process incredibly well, better than we can do it ourselves or, in a revised way? Too often we get into the hype of like, oh, everyone's talking about Delphi or this or that. And then we lose track of, wait, how does that actually help us delegate what is actually generating value in our business? We need to treat it more like delegation to humans.
With that said, a little candy here. What are like the top 3 tools that your audience is excited about and gets a lot of value from?
Ooh, a lot of AI tools right now. I would say Pickaxe Project is one that we're personally pretty bullish on. I love that kind of use of language model wrappers that you can then repurchase, repackage, or resell. So
what does Pickaxe do?
It takes any kind of language model that you connect to it, any kind of API connected AI, and then you can build either a form or a chat interface around that in your own branding and then resell it, redistribute it. So we have folks using that with their own private knowledge files to build client support docs. Opt-ins are being used for that, and even marketplaces. It has like a purchasing and buying thing. It's a newer tool that's very cool. Relay app is the other one that's kind of taking over the world in terms of, kicking Zapier and Make kind of to the side as the go-to, agentic workflow that people are really loving right now.
What is an example of a workflow that is driving a lot of value for a client, just so we can see our way into it?
The most common one we'll see for things like Relay, it would be the connection between a CRM and a task tool. So say you close the deal, all the things that are required to go from deal closed with a human touch point to project is ready to go, automating all of those steps in a smarter way than you can do in Make or Zapier is what Relay is really good for. And it has a really, beginner-friendly interface, which is really helping it take off for our audience.
Okay, this is good stuff. What about the third one?
I wouldn't say it's the most popular, but those who know, they know, is the virtual co-working space software. So Roam and Gather are some big ones. There's several others. And it's essentially a virtual office. It replaces Zoom in some ways, and it gives you a physical space to meet with your team or with your employees or with your, conference attendees. We use this here. We've been telling clients about it. The folks who try it are like, oh my God, I can never go back to Zoom again. And I could not agree more. So I think that is going to be something that in 5 years, every virtual team has.
What is the advantage? Does it give me an avatar, or how does it work?
It gives you an avatar, and it also gives you proximity audio and video in all of these tools. So as you walk around your office to go to the team meeting, you will see people in the hallway and you'll be able to hear them. When you go into the team meeting, it feels just like Zoom, but then you can walk out and you can pop into people's offices. It really recreates the impromptu conversation.
How have I not heard about this?
Dude, Farmville meets Zoom, but it actually is really fun. Stardew Valley meets Zoom. Let's make it more relevant.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so for virtual communities, for just your team, for clients, for the more adventurous tech-forward clients, very cool. No, VR glasses or anything needed. It's just through your web browser for now. But I'm very bullish on these taking over.
Those are great. Is there anything else you want to mention at a top level about tactics or processes for small business owners? Some axes you have to grind or things you're really passionate about right now, or tips?
I think I've already ranted about integrator enough, so I'll leave that one there. The only thing I would say is to try to think about your business in a process map, but in a loop. Wherever possible, the example I gave you of preventative actions that get better and better over time, that's what we want to be building. Whereas most things are about, let's create this SOP, and it gets less and less good over time. It becomes more and more outdated. We want to build cyclical feedback loops in our business. That's what system design is really about.
What's your overall take on dusty SOPs and like having team members do it, but then we don't look at it, they don't look at it? How do we prevent this in general?
SOPs are a last resort. There are so many types of system building things you can do that work better than an SOP that we should be using. SOPs got great marketing. They're boring as hell, but like people know about them. So I'm happy for that. But exactly what you're talking about happens way too often, and then people write off the whole space. Before you go to SOPs, I want you to exhaust templates. I want you to exhaust tasks. I want you to exhaust structures that you can use, decision trees, process maps, literally every other tool in our process building arsenal, I would want you to use before SOPs. The only thing that comes after SOPs is automation, but those are the last two steps, not the first two.
Layla, that's our title. SOPs are a last resort. People are going to love that. That's fantastic. Layla, if you have some time here at the end, I would like to ask you a little bit about how you designed your business, because from the outside, It seems like you're in a laudable position, which you mentioned recently that you guys stopped posting on Facebook, that you have this obvious juggernaut of a YouTube channel. I want to know, what can the rest of us do about YouTube in 2026? Is it over? How can we build a consulting or service business that has a powerful YouTube presence? And how useful is it for getting clients versus other channels from your perspective?
I see a lot of people creating YouTube channels who don't actually want to be on YouTube. So if that's you, don't do it. Sorry.
I hate this.
Get out of here. He's like, I hate every moment of this. Get me out of here. I would say don't do it, because you'll feel it. It's exhausting. It's the heaviest lift of all of the media channels by far. And now we've got AI imitating all of our videos, so you've got even more demand on you. For those of you, though, who don't mind speaking, and who would be interested in the art of YouTube. Maybe you watch a lot of YouTube. I think it is single-handedly the best way to get in front of new audiences. I mean, I started a YouTube channel accidentally because I was using the channel to basically host tutorials for my clients. It's literally, free hosting. Put it up there. People started finding it. When COVID hit and I lost a client due to, COVID stuff, they got shut down, I spent my entire time I would have spent with that client making videos. Within the course of 6 months, I was booked out for the rest of the year, basically. It took 1,000 subscribers to blow up my entire business, 5,000 to realize we have to change models. And 30,000, everything after that was like gravy because the business had enough flow to support anything I wanted to do with it. Now, I didn't develop it the right way. If I could do it again, I would make some changes. But
like what?
Well, for me, what I did is I went from services to kind of a cohort-based service model. And then when the business started blowing up and I had a 6-month wait list, I'm like, this is insane. Let me switch to online products. So I switched to a membership, did that for several years while doing consulting, then just the membership. Then I did courses, and now I'm back to courses plus services. And what I really should have done is just continued with services at a higher rate, way higher rate. I was undercharging for a very long time. And I thought that the answer to more time back in my life would be to do services, to do a membership, to do online products. I've had years where it's just pure passive income. It's incredible. But it's actually not the best way to scale a business and have a great profit margin. I would have been better served 10xing my prices than building out online products. I could have done that for 1 year to get 2 years worth of digital product income. And I should have flipped the order.
I think a lot of us, it's like business model flirtation versus like what I'm hearing you say is you had a really good thing, like a channel and model mix where like people saw you speaking and they're like, that's who I need. And then you're like, here's this membership.
Yeah. And it's sold. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
yeah.
Well, but yeah.
How can founders think about appropriately pricing then? Why were you undercharging, and how do you, in a services business, think about determining the correct pricing?
The strategy I now use and will stand by is the classic sell one, increase the price approach. That's
okay.
It. So we do pricing sensitivity surveys and other things for like digital products where you don't get to talk to people. But that's why I love selling things with sales calls is literally the price will change from call to call throughout the day. And so the call will just keep going until we get, we dip below a 20% close rate because for us, we have enough volume that we can be picky. And that's going to be the price that we'll stay at for a while.
It's like one of those bars that the drink prices change, basically.
Essentially, until and then you stick at that price for a while until you make the service better or you've got more reputation because it's hard to do it with value pricing. You're not basing it on the cost of the craft beer. It's, this exclusive beer that you can only get in October. How much is that worth? I'm not smart enough to just know. So I let the audience tell me. And that means people who buy early get great deals on anything new we offer. People who buy late, they get charged a proportion to what the actual value is.
Walk me through a little bit of that journey of you've got this powerful, marketing platform now. You've got all these calls booked.
I guess, yeah. I don't think of it that way, but yeah.
How do you, 130,000 subscribers? That's good. That's like more people than can fit into Beaver Stadium. An insider. How have you explored these different pricing models? Because a lot of us, it makes sense that you would think about a membership because a lot of people are like, oh, I need a retainer or I need a retention, right? Or do you do one-offs? What's your current thinking on all that?
So actually, it's not relevant to my business really, but I made a video on this because I was just passionate about it. I'd gone through all these models and what I came to realize for myself, and people can watch the YouTube video to here's what I did when it was a service. Here's what it was like when it was a product. But I actually let my calendar decide. I reflected for myself, since at this point in the business with, a team of 10, actually, I'm still involved in the business and I want to be in certain areas. And so I looked at in each of these models, how do I want to spend my time? And I realized I like talking to people, but I hate being in a message board. I don't like big groups. I don't I'm an introvert. I don't want to be in a big group thing. Even at DCBKK, I was there. I was talking one-on-one to someone in the corner. And that's
what I do.
Favorite. Yeah. And so when you start to know yourself, I use that to design the business around that. So I knew what I was good at. And then I thought about which clients would need a transformation that works really well in this format. So one-on-one for me manifested in either courses, because I'm recording a video and then you're consuming it, or one-on-one services with a fixed scope, because I don't deal with people who aren't serious about things. And so what kind of transformation could I provide that matches my audience that fits that model? And once we had constraints, it became very clear what kind of model would work well and what kind of business I wanted to run. So from us, that turned out to be a fixed scope kind of coaching model business. My friend Timothy Moser, who introduced me to DC, he has a similar model. And so I kind of learned from him a little bit what that reality would be. And so we do a one-on-one coaching business, one-on-one with clients over a fixed scope of time, and we help them systemize their business with a fixed scope. And what's cool about this is I like the initial offer. So when I go in there and I want to pilot and build the service, I'm comfortable delivering it. But ultimately, my job is to manage coaches who then deliver the service. I like working with smart people. And so I would much rather work with a team of coaches as the next step of reality rather than working with a team of freelancers who are creating content creation stuff, because that would have been the other way to scale. And so I'm designing it all very selfishly around like, how do I want to spend my time and who do I want to spend my time with?
Very cool. Final question. YouTube changes a lot and you know a lot about it. How are you going to get views in 2026? What are some things that you are considering to compete? Everybody feels like they're late to the game. There's a lot of us that want to create more content on YouTube. We see the potential. What are some things you were thinking about to have powerful videos that drive client adoption in 26?
I think it's funny. I keep squirming every time you say like YouTube. I'm like, I'm not a YouTuber. I still don't have that. I guess so. God. I don't have that identity yet.
Have you been recognized on the street ever?
I've been recognized at events, not on the street. That would be... I haven't gotten there yet, so I feel like I haven't made it. Not that I want that to happen. Please don't find me. Please,
that would start to suck. Yeah, that would really be.
That would suck.
That would be the end of it.
What am I doing? Number one, I'm hiring out for strategy. I mean, back to delegation, I recognize I'm not someone who's going to be on the algorithms at all times, so I hired for that. What are we doing though in that strategy? It's how I have content, how I have blah, 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 and you can too. That's the model that we've been playing and we're going to continue to play. The second one, which has been there since the very beginning, every video I've done has modeled this way, is I always create a video based on a client question. There's not one video that we've produced that hasn't come from someone in my audience sending the question in. So when someone joins my email list, I send them an email. What video would you like me to create? Those ideas go into a list. We have thousands of them. And then I have AI analyze all those for trends. And then that's how we pick our video topics. So I'm never going to stop that. And I think that's why the videos resonate, is because they are literally from exact quotes from our people rather than me trying to guess what would be cool.
Makes it easy as a creator too, I imagine, because you know that this video will crush for one person and you're speaking to that person in a passionate, like specific way. And it's like, if you happen to be overhearing, make your own decision. But as a creator, it's kind of hard to like pontificate about things. But it's quite simple to say, well, if I were in your shoes, here's what I've done. And here's what I think could be valuable to you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's freeing about services. And people, rag on services because it takes time. It doesn't have to be your time. But what's nice about a service is I need 1 or 5 or 10 clients a month for this service for it all to be worth it. In the course side of our business, we need 300 sales or of just one course for the year to hit our goals. And so you have to play broader. And I love the power of kind of scaling up content with nicher and nicher and nicher topics, because you're right, the overhearing potential can really work.
Very cool. Layla Pomper, thank you for taking your time to come on the Tropical MBA podcast. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.